Now this is the house we're talking about. A modest home in southwest Atlanta where Robert Elder built more than 50 years of memories. His whole life was wrapped up in these walls. In 2023, someone filed not one, not two, but 3 different deeds transferring Robert's home to someone else. The signatures on all 3 documents looked nothing like how Robert actually signs his name. And there's a reason for that. Robert Elder is blind. He doesn't sign his name straight across a signature line like you or I would. He never has. So who forged the signature of an 85-year-old blind grandfather and tried to steal his home? According to court documents, it was his own stepson. We all know that scammers like to target the elderly. They call pretending to be the IRS. They send fake emails claiming to be from Medicare. They show up at the door with stories about needing to fix the roof. But they don't usually share Thanksgiving dinner with their victims. They don't usually call them Dad. This is the story of how Robert Elder's life was turned upside down by someone who should have been protecting him, and how his case helped expose a massive flaw in Georgia law that left thousands of homeowners vulnerable to the exact same crime. Robert Elder had lived in his southwest Atlanta home for more than 5 decades. Think about that for a moment. More than 50 years of building equity. More than 50 years of memories. Christmas mornings, birthday parties, grandchildren running through the halls. Decades of mortgage payments, property taxes, and repairs. All of it adding up to something he could pass on to his family. By 2023, Robert was 85 years old and retired. He was blind, but he was still living independently in the house he knew by heart. Every creak in the floorboard, every step from the bedroom to the kitchen, the placement of every piece of furniture memorized after years of navigating those rooms in the dark. This was home, the only home that mattered. Then came July 2023. Without Robert's knowledge, a deed was filed at the Fulton County Clerk's office. This deed claimed to transfer ownership of Robert's house from Robert Elder to Tory Elder, his stepson from his first marriage. Robert never signed it. Robert never even knew about it. A month later, in August, another deed appeared. This one was labeled as a corrective deed, because apparently the first forged document wasn't good enough. Then in September, a third deed was filed. 3 fraudulent documents in 3 months, all claiming that Robert had willingly handed over his home of 50 years to his stepson. Here's what made this so easy to pull off. Under Georgia law at the time, no identification was required to file property paperwork at the clerk's office. You didn't have to prove you owned the property. You didn't have to prove you were who you claimed to be. You didn't even need to show your face to a clerk. You just walked in with a piece of paper, and they filed it. No questions asked. Anyone could file a deed on any property in the entire state of Georgia. Your home, my home, it didn't matter. If someone wanted to claim they now owned your house, all they needed was a document and a notary stamp. The system was built on trust, and that trust was being exploited every single day. Atlanta News First Investigates was the first to uncover Robert's story as part of their Misdeeds series, a years-long investigation into deed theft in Georgia. Reporter Kiera Cummings had been tracking cases like Robert's across the state, finding victim after victim who had lost their homes through the same simple scam. When reporters examined the 3 deeds filed on Robert's home, the evidence of fraud was obvious. None of the signatures matched the way Robert signs his name. And remember, Robert is blind. His signature has a distinctive quality because he can't see the signature line. The signatures on the fraudulent deeds were neat, straight, and perfectly aligned. Robert's signature never looked like that. It couldn't. Robert's attorney, Rick Allenbick, put it plainly. There's no question somebody notarized a document that was signed by someone who was not Mr. Elder. And that raises another disturbing question. 2 notaries stamped those fraudulent deeds. Their names were Jamila Garth and Christine Smith. If Robert Elder never signed the deeds and never met the notaries who stamped them, then why were the deeds notarized in the first place? Atlanta News First Investigates attempted to contact both notaries. Smith was eventually reached by phone, but she refused to explain the incident. She wouldn't say how she notarized a signature from a man who wasn't there. When reporters tracked down Tory Elder, Robert's stepson, his response was remarkable. He didn't apologize. He didn't try to explain. Instead, he accused his 85-year-old blind father of lying. That's right. The man whose signature was clearly forged, whose home was being stolen through fraudulent documents, was called a liar by the person the court would later find responsible. And this brings us to the strangest part of this whole nightmare. Legal experts told reporters that even if a homeowner can prove they've been the victim of deed fraud, a judge can still order them to move out. There's no simple court for challenging a forged deed, Allenbick explained. That's the fundamental problem. Robert Elder was fighting an uphill battle. He was 85. He was blind. And the system that should have protected him had made it ridiculously easy for someone to steal his home with nothing more than a forged signature and a notary stamp. But Robert wasn't giving up. He filed a civil lawsuit against his stepson, accusing Tory of fraud, larceny, and malicious injury. The case made its way through the court system while Atlanta News First continued to investigate Georgia's broken deed system. The news coverage caught the attention of Georgia lawmakers. State Representative Gabe Okoye of Lawrenceville sponsored House Bill 1292, legislation specifically designed to close the loophole that made Robert's nightmare possible. On the final day of the 2024 legislative session, the Georgia General Assembly passed the bill. Governor Brian Kemp signed it into law. People have been getting away with it, and we must stop it, Representative Okoye said. We're happy to do just that, thanks to the investigation. The new law required identification when filing a deed. It required notaries to keep written or electronic journals of each deed they notarize, including dates, times, locations, and forms of identification. Deeds would also be filed electronically. The law took effect on January 1st, 2025. But for Robert Elder, the legal victory was bittersweet at best. In August 2025, the court signed a judgment against Tory Elder that both parties agreed to. The judgment found Tory responsible for fraud, larceny, and malicious injury, and ordered him to pay his father $136,000 in damages. Under Georgia's new law, If someone is found responsible for forged deeds in civil court, they must pay all damages and the victim's attorney fees. But in Robert's case, the new law wasn't fully tested because there was no trial. The settlement was reached before that could happen. Robert's attorney, Rick Alembic, was asked if the outcome was emotionally satisfying. His answer was telling. Would you like to see these people go to jail? Certainly, but that's just not the way the system works. To this day, there is no evidence that criminal charges were ever filed against Tory Elder. Despite the court finding fraud, larceny, and malicious injury, despite the forged signatures, despite 2 notaries stamping documents they apparently never witnessed being signed. No charges. When reporters asked Robert how he felt about the settlement, his response said everything about what this case really cost him. "It looks kind of dark right now," he said. "The order doesn't feel like a win because it represents a loss of family." Think about that. This 86-year-old man won his case. The court found his stepson committed fraud. He was awarded $136,000. But he wasn't celebrating. Robert wasn't celebrating a $136,000 judgment. He was mourning a relationship, a stepson who called him dad, someone he welcomed into his family decades ago, someone he trusted with everything, some form of apologizing. "For doing that to me would be a way toward healing," Robert said. He wasn't asking for money. He was asking for acknowledgement, for his stepson to say, "I'm sorry for what I did to you." As of the last update on this case, that apology never came. Robert Elder's case was just one of several highlighted in the Atlanta News' first investigation. There was Branda Booth, whose sister's home was transferred to a private company 3 months after her sister died. The family didn't even know until strangers started showing up at the property. There was Eric Clark, who returned home one day to find a notice on his door saying his house had been sold at a foreclosure auction. He didn't even know his home was in foreclosure, because it wasn't. Someone had simply filed fake paperwork and sold his house out from under him. And there was a Stone Mountain couple who were forced out of their home after someone stole it through fraudulent documents. When the 77-year-old husband refused to leave his own house, he was arrested. Think about that. A man gets arrested for refusing to leave a home he rightfully owns because someone forged a piece of paper. The pattern was the same in every case. Forged deeds, notaries who stamped documents without verification, a system that made it almost impossible for victims to fight back. The new Georgia law is a start, a real start. Identification is now required to file deeds. Notaries must keep detailed records. Electronic filing creates a paper trail that didn't exist before. But Rick Alembic knows the truth about how these cases usually end. Even with new protections, the system still favors the criminals. "It's too easy to forge a deed and record it," he told reporters. "That's the fundamental problem." Robert Elder is now 86 years old. He got some money from the settlement. He can, as he put it, kind of patch things up. But the home he built 50 years of memories in, the family he thought he had, the trust he placed in someone who called him dad. Some things can't be patched up. "With my health and everything," Robert said, "I got to move on." The story of Robert Elder is tragic, but it also shows something else. His case, along with the others exposed by Atlanta News First, actually changed the law. Thousands of Georgia homeowners are now better protected because one blind 85-year-old man refused to be quiet about what happened to him. If you or someone you know suspects property fraud, Georgia now offers the Filing Activity Notification System, which will alert you whenever paperwork is filed on your property. It doesn't prevent fraud, but it gives you a chance to catch it early. My name is Michael. Stay safe out there, and as always, thank you for watching.